Well, thanks again, Odell, for joining us. And so, Odell, if you can, just for churches and for men who are unaware with who you are, would you mind just kind of introducing us to who you are?
Okay. So I am originally from Chicago, Illinois. I lived there for 8 years. That's where I was born. And then family moved to Rochester, New York, and that's where I grew up, graduated high school. I came to Atlanta to go to graduate school at Clark Atlanta University. And I got a master's degree in African American Studies. And before I finished the master's degree in African American Studies, I went to Bethel Seminary in Arden Hills, Minnesota, to get a certificate in biblical studies because I'd always wanted to study the Bible. And so I finished both of those in 2003 and went back to Rochester, New York. And Rochester was a very depressed city. Kodak was on the decline and the economy just wasn't good. And so I decided to leave and come back to Atlanta. And I've been here ever since. And I have attended Impact Church, which is a United Methodist congregation. And I've been there since the beginning, which was 2007. And I've been involved in the men's ministry and went through the men's ministry certification process through the United Methodist Men. So I'm one of two certified United men's ministry specialists in the North Georgia Conference of the United Methodist Church, which is everything north of Macon, Georgia. And I became involved as a result of going through this men's ministry specialist process with the United Methodist Men. And last year I was elected president of the North Georgia Conference United Methodist Men. So that's just a little bit about me.
That's great. That's great. And I know you have a chance to work and talk with a lot of churches, and I would love to know from your perspective what some of the unique challenges that churches are facing, and especially what are they facing with men and trying to develop men and get men to lead in the church.
So some churches are doing an excellent job in the discipleship process with men. Most churches are struggling to get men to become involved in the men's ministry and become involved in the church. And part of it is, I believe that the men's ministry, United Methodist Men at local churches, operates more like a civic club than it does the actual men's ministry. Now, there are lives being changed in some of these men's ministries. There are folk who are being attracted to and joining these men's ministries. But for many of them, these men's ministries are struggling. And there's a whole lot of men in the church who are not a part of the men's ministry, and the men's ministry doesn't have the tools and the techniques to reach out to the other men in the church. So I see, to be kind about it, I see a spiritual gifts deficit, that some people are not operating in their gifts and their spiritual gifts. And there are those who are evangelists, and those evangelists should be leading the way, and they're not serving in a leadership role in order to get more men to become involved. And then there's men who are gifted in discipleship, and those men should also be out front. So we are encouraging a different model in the United Methodist Men, and it's based on Man in the Mirror, where we reach out to all of the men in the church and have multiple. What is unique about United Methodist Men is that in most congregations, there's only one United Methodist Men group in the church. But within that same church, there's about 7 United Methodist women's groups. And so I'm just trying to get the United Methodist Men to adopt a different mindset, that the United Methodist women seem to be more adaptable, and they reach more women that way.
Yeah. Where do you feel like, as looking at men, just whether in the church or just men in general, what are some of the unique challenges that you think men are facing today, kind of in their daily lives, spiritual lives?
So here's what we know based upon what I've done several interviews with one of the recovery ministries and with one who's a professor of psychology at a Christian university. And they're telling me that during the quarantine, porn addiction is increased, alcohol addiction has increased, drug addiction has increased, and unfortunately, so has domestic violence incidences. So we need men to embrace this discipleship process, to come along with other men to guide them to making better choices, and understand that the quarantine has had some emotional impact on a lot of people, particularly if they've lost their jobs. However, the coping mechanisms that men are choosing seem to be more detrimental to their physical health and their spiritual health than anything at any time since, I guess, the recession of 2009. And we need to give men the tools to cope with loss.
That's good. And one of the things I've enjoyed connecting with you about
is just the different ways and avenues that you're trying to engage men. And that's one thing we talk with churches about this. Hey, we're never going to be your one answer for your men, but we feel like we can come alongside you and complement you with what you're doing. So let me ask you, having talked with churches and seen some of the experience with radical mentoring, how do you think this fits with kind of your overall strategy and kind of the strategy you would see with United Methodist churches?
So what I see clearly with United Methodist men is that the overwhelming majority are over 50, and even more specifically, retirement age. And in order for the United Methodist men to continue into the rest of the 21st century, we need millennials and Generation X, younger Generation X, millennials, and older Generation Z. The best way to corner this market, and I'm going to use a marketing term because they're a demographic that Madison Avenue is going after, but the church seems that it isn't putting the time, the energy, and the effort into making sure that we create this spiritual legacy of the next generation, unless the church has some forward-thinking pastors and elders and leaders in the church. Most of our churches have young men who are disconnected from the men's ministry, and most of our churches don't have any, some of our churches don't have any young men at all. And that is for a lack of missionary zeal. And what I mean is that some churches are maintenance churches where they are maintaining the building, maintaining the property, maintaining their traditional services, maintaining their image. And some churches are missional. And these missional churches are doing contemporary services, they're doing modern services, they're doing satellite churches within the United Methodist Church. And these are attracting younger men in particular. However, it doesn't translate into them getting involved in United Methodist men necessarily, or getting involved into the life of the church because they haven't been properly discipled. So we are looking for a discipleship process model that will specifically address the deficit of younger men in the United Methodist men. And when I look at Jesus, he took 12 men and he took them fishing, and he took them with him to minister and to the people, to the public. He spent time with 12 men. And that's the discipleship model. The word disciple is Latin, coming out of the Latin. The actual Greek word means an apprentice. And so as I've been going to churches, what I've been telling them is, you are the master teacher, or you're the journeyman, and somebody's a novice who's an apprentice, and this is your role. Your role is to teach so that they eventually become a journeyman. So I'm trying to get them to see how Jesus did it in that apprenticeship model.
It's all about relationships.
That's correct. Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Odell, thanks so much for taking a few minutes. And any other words of wisdom you would drop to some guys who are just kind of kicking the tires and checking things out with radical mentoring?
Mm-hmm. So here's what I'm seeing, and I watched this at Northside. I was in on when this first started, before when they were planning this at Northside United Methodist Church, and so I've watched this, and I'm sort of from an outside looking in, having access to Northside United Methodist. These are young men who were attending the church, coming every Sunday, but were disconnected to the men's ministry, and there was a bond that was formed. And that's what we want to see replicated in every church, because older men have life wisdom, and older men sometimes are dying with that life wisdom. And younger men are not going to go up to them as they have in past generations and say, hey, I need you to mentor me. They may do that in business, but they're not doing that in church. And so what I need is for older men to share the wisdom that they have with the younger men in the church, so that this legacy continues, not just of United Methodist men, but just that we have spiritually informed men. Because what I'm seeing amongst millennial men is that, according to the statistics, 52% of them grew up without a father in the home. And so they don't have the spiritual male role model that is needed. Now you can pick it up along the way. It can be caught. I'd rather that it be taught. I'd rather that it be intentional. And that's where we're asking Radical Mentoring to help step in with United Methodist men and United Methodist churches to come and to give us a process, because it seems that a lot of men don't understand a lot of older men don't understand how to disciple younger men. And we're asking for Radical Mentoring to come in and give us the process, to show us the methods that are effective in reaching younger men, as though you were the coach of a football team. You're not the head coach, you might be the wide receivers coach, but you've got all these wide receivers, and you're going to give them the playbook, and you're going to teach them the playbook so that they can be successful when they're not only on the football field, when they're out there catching the ball on the sidelines, and they've got to tap their toes like a ballerina to make sure that they're inbounds so that their catch counts, and not just on the football field, but also give them this playbook for life. And that's what we're asking men in United Methodist men to do, to go through this process of radical mentoring, so that they can give this wisdom and information that they've gained spiritually, as well as life experience, to pass on to younger men, so that this discipleship process can continue forward, and that God's glory will reign in the earth.
Well, we're truly excited about partnering together.
And putting this in the hands of churches, and our heart, it's about relationship and providing an intentional process for men in that relationship. So thanks again for the partnership, and we're excited about seeing what churches can do with it.